All right, welcome everybody to week 1 of COM 100 Professional Communications. My name is Dr. Erin Walton and I am your instructor for this class and this term. It's nice to have you with me. So a couple of things for this week. First of all, before we jump into any of the good content that I've got for you today, I want to do a couple of things, and I will always start my sessions the same way. I will let you know where we're going and how we're going to get there, okay? So first thing I want to do is give you a little bit of my personal background. I think it's important because, you know, the style of class that this is, I tend to learn an awful lot about you folks as students. It seems only fair that I give you the same courtesy in return. So I'd like to give you a little bit of my background, super short. We'll talk through some of the mechanics of the class, when, where, and how, and then we'll jump into the content for the week. After that, if you have questions, I will hang out just for a bit and I'm happy to answer them. Also, I've got the chat box open in front of me, so if something comes up while I'm going on, feel free to type it in there as well. Everybody is on mute, everybody's video is off, so that's good. After we get through the opening part, I'll probably turn my video off as well. I find that it gets a little distracting. Maybe it's because I talk with my hands, I don't know. But I'll turn my video off and we can just focus on the content, okay? All right, so that's the plan for the evening. So let's start with my introduction here. So Dr. Erin Walton, you can see all those fancy name letters after my name there. They were all really hard to earn, but I would never ever make you call me all of those things. That's ridiculous. You can call me Dr. Walton, Dr. W, Dr. E-Dubs, whatever works best for you. I'll answer to most anything. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, moved to California about 7 or 8 years ago. Have 2 kids, have a very cute dog. You'll probably end up hearing him in the background of a couple of these sessions. He is my personal 4-legged doorbell. I am also like a ginormous nerd. So what you see at the top on the right there is you've got Wonder Woman and Okoye from Black Panther. 2 of my very favorite lady supers, okay? I'm also a huge Harry Potter nerd. I'm a Slytherin, House Slytherin. Not evil, just very ambitious, all right? Not all Slytherins are evil. So if either of those are your fandoms, you know, you're in good company. In fact, most of my PowerPoints, okay, that's a lie. All of my PowerPoints that I'll walk you through, you're going to see plenty of nerd stuff, all right? Yes, Wonder Woman, that's right. She's my girl. In fact, if I didn't need to keep my background as my book image, you'd see my whole wall is covered in just stuff. Big nerd, love it, it's my favorite, okay? So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm going to learn a lot about you as we go forward, but I think it's important that you folks know that I'm a human on the other side of the computer, right? I have kids. I'm doing that single mom thing, raising kids. Those of you who are working parents, even single working parents, I feel you. I've been you. I am you. And I can offer you a lot of thoughts and feelings and insight on managing school and home and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to help with anything I can. I think that's how we grow, is helping each other. So that's a little bit about me, okay? So a couple of the mechanical things. We've got 2 opportunities where we can meet live during the week. We've got, of course, this live session. This is where you're going to find a lot of helpful hints to approach the content. We're going to go over the content together, the assigned chapters and all that stuff. Of course, we'll prepare for tests. We'll be going over that as we get closer to the midterm and the final. But as always, I do record it. So if you cannot make it live, go have dinner with your family. Catch me when you can catch me. That's the joy of online education, okay? Make sure you click the link so you can get your attendance, of course. but don't, if it's a big headache to get here and be with me live, it's okay. I want you to be with your families, okay? That being said, you need to watch the session if you can't make it live. A lot of the times I will throw out some helpful hints, some, you know, if you're watching the live session, here's a template for the next assignment, but you have to email me and let me know. So if you don't watch the live session, you'll never have gotten that help, you know, so watch it, it's important, okay? The other time we can meet, of course, is office hours. I usually am open 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time on Wednesdays, and I just kind of hold the room open and mostly catch up on grading is the goal. If you want to drop in, feel free. It is first come, first serve. If you are unsure or you want a private appointment, how long you'll need, you know, I can always set up some one-to-one time with you. Just let me know what you need from me. In the online classroom, you'll see my email, my student phone number. You can text me, you can Skype me, like I'm wildly available. So I'm here. Use me. That's what I'm here for. Okay. Okay. All right. Let me see. Any other things I want to cover before I just jump right in? We had a couple more join. Welcome. Okay, I think that's kind of it. So if we are all good and ready and you folks have notes and you're good to go, let's go ahead and turn off the camera and jump into content. So in week 1, we are covering chapter 1, communicating at work. Now, it's going to be, I think, pretty standard stuff that you're going to learn, especially in the early weeks. There's a lot of kind of bits and pieces I'll bet most of you already know a lot about. The trick I've found with communication courses is that it's hard to apply the skills you know in every single setting. And I think that's mostly how I want to approach this with you folks. We're going to talk about things like nonverbal communication, active listening, that kind of stuff. And when we are talking about your personal life, of course, those are easy things to practice, but it gets tricky when you have to take those same communication skills to work. So that's sort of where I want to go with this, letting you know how best to manage your communication style and skills on the job, because that's what we want you to do. We want you to go out and get working, right? And be awesome. Now, before I get into chapter 1, I do want to cover one concept, and I will tell you right off the bat, this one is not tested on. It's only for your information, and I hope that you find it relevant. I'm going to tell you how we're going to use it, okay? So I want to talk to you just a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've taken any basic psychology course, I'm sure this looks familiar to you. Basically, Abraham Maslow, 1930s, social scientist, very cool dude. He realized that all human beings were sort of working on the same goals as people, right? And he started to categorize them because that's what nerdy science guys do, okay? No judgment. I love this stuff. So he looked at all the communication we have with each other, all of the things we do on the daily, and he made this chart, okay? Organized it like a triangle or pyramid. Now down at the bottom, you see all the really basic needs that every single person needs in order to sort of live, right? All your physiological needs. You got air, water, food, shelter, sleep. Sex is on physiological. He meant for reproduction, not procreation. I'm not judging. You put sex wherever you want to put it on this pyramid, okay? Those are all the basics. Every single person needs those things, all right? Now, after we have a good grasp on those physiological needs, we start to move up the pyramid. So after we have consistent food, regular shelter, clean water, fresh air, we start to try to feel safe. We need personal security. You need steady employment. You need to have the resources, money. You have to have some health, right? If you're chronically ill, it's hard to feel safe. These things start to get a little more abstract as we go up the pyramid. So everybody's safety need It looks just a little bit different, okay? Do you live maybe in a neighborhood where you have a house, but there's bars on the windows, or there's constantly it's getting broken into, like the neighborhood's not super safe? Well, that's going to be hard for you to sort of feel safe in that environment, right? Same with your relationships. If you feel safe in your marriage or partnership, that's great. Or do you think your significant other is stepping out on you? You know, it doesn't make you feel super safe in that relationship. So there's a lot of things that kind of sit on this level. Okay. Now, these two bottom needs are your super most basic levels. You've got to have these things to move to the top three. The top three are where we get the really good stuff. Okay. Um, let's look at that middle one, orange, love and belonging. Okay. So this is being a part of a group, having a social circle, being connected to something a little bit bigger than you. So good friends, um, strong family can fit into here. I've seen things fit into this category like, oh gosh, like bowling at leagues where you meet once a week and you're part of that team. That makes you feel like you belong to something, right? Fantasy football leagues, nerds like me at Comic-Con. We don't know each other, but we all dress up and we go and we're part of something bigger. It's a really important level that you start to develop kind of internally, okay? Now, above that is the esteem needs. So if the belonging need is, do other people like me? The esteem need is, do I like myself? Do I like how I look? Do I like what my job is? Do I feel confident regularly? Do I have the freedom to make my own decisions? Things like that. And this is really an interesting stage. Now, before I deep dive into it a little bit, I want you to think about this. Okay. If you do not have clean air, regular access to food and shelter, consistent sleep, does it make any sense to you to really work on yourself as a person? Right? If I, don't have a consistent job and I can't pay my bills and I'm evicted, maybe I'm living in my car, my safety needs are not met, I don't really need to worry about, I need more friends. I've got lower level needs I need to attend to. So it's really important that you understand that these bottom two levels, while they may experience some flux, they're super important that everybody can satisfy before they're allowed to grow as individuals and humans and build relationships and learn about themselves. It's very, very important. Okay. Um, so esteem, you get to challenge your beliefs in this level. You get to say, hey, I was always raised as a Republican, and now I'm not sure that works for me anymore. Maybe I should take a look at that. Or I see a lot of my students question things like, oh, I grew up in this church and it doesn't make sense for me. So I want to ask some questions. And you start to really build a unique sense of self. Okay. Now, once you have very solidly completed or satisfied these needs, you get to move up to the blue one, which is self-actualization, which is the hardest of all of these. Okay. Because basically all the things on the outside of you are handled, right? Everything you need in life is there for you. And now you just have to work on the inside of your heart and your head. You have to become what you're meant to be. You have to see yourself as a citizen of the world. You have to elevate yourself and meet your own potential. It's an incredible journey, and not very many people get to meet up to that pyramid, okay, at the top. Now, most of my students, they're coming to me. Some of them are in the red there down at the bottom. They're still working on consistently having some of these things. Most of them, I would say, are looking to fulfill that orange need, the safety. That's a lot of the reason people go to school, is because they want better employment, better paychecks. Paycheck is security. You can do more with it. So if you're here and those levels sound, vaguely familiar, you're in a good spot. You're right where I would expect. You might be dabbling in some of your friendship needs. I hope that you're always working on your esteem needs, right? But you're right where you need to be, okay? Now, the reason I start our communications class with Maslow's hierarchy of needs is I think it's super important to be a good communicator, that we consider where the other people in our circle are at on this pyramid, okay? So let me use an example for you. So let's imagine let's see, it's going to be me and Maria. We are at work together, okay? And I want to go to a concert on Friday. I've got a shift. I want to get Maria to cover it for me so I can go. Now, if I take 1 second and I think, last time I talked to Maria, what did we talk about? Oh, she mentioned that she's saving up for a Mother's Day gift for her mom, and she was struggling to, pay the power bill this month. Pretty normal stuff, right? Some very basic adult stuff. So when I go over to Maria and I ask her, "Hey Maria, I want you to take my shift on Friday. Please, pretty please, do what I want because I want it, please." What's the likelihood Maria's gonna jump on it and go, "Of course. Well, if you want it, why not? Why would I not?" Well, it's probably pretty low. But if I present the information or the request in a way where Maria can see how it would benefit her and help her meet her needs in addition to my needs, she's more likely to be persuaded. Okay. So if I say, "Maria, I've got a shift on Friday that I'm trying to get rid of. I remember you saying you were saving up for your Mother's Day gift and you had mentioned the power bill, and I thought maybe it would be helpful to offer it to you first, see if you want to take that shift." Now, I'm getting the same thing out of it. Maria ultimately works the shift, you know, but the approach is what's important. The approach takes into account Maria's needs and allows her to have some buy-in. Now, I have had students in the past say to me, "Well, that sounds like a little bit of manipulation." Well, it can be used that way. I'll be honest. Okay. Every good nerd knows that for every superhero, you need a supervillain. So I'm going to teach you a lot of these kinds of skills, tailoring your message to satisfy someone else's needs and taking the time to recognize how you can be a bit more persuasive, perhaps using that. That's all superpower stuff. And you get to choose how to use it. Okay. There's an ethical component here that we'll go into a little bit later, but it's something that you have at in your toolkit, essentially. All right. So Maslow, very cool dude, very cool theory. If you want to hear more about it, I could talk about it all day, but let's move on. Let's get into chapter 1. In chapter 1, we're talking a lot about communication and, of course, how it relates to your career success. So what are we talking about? What is interpersonal communication? Well, the best definition I've been able to find so far: interpersonal communication is the process of exchanging messages between people whose lives mutually influence one another in unique ways to relational and social and cultural norms. In relation to social and cultural norms, sorry. So that's very fancy. What does it mean? Well, we need 2 or more people, and we need there to be some sort of influence there. So if I have a light chit chat with the checkout gal next time I get groceries, that's not really considered interpersonal communication because it's very passive, right? We're looking for something just a little more substantive, okay? Now, why do you even have to take a communications class in your degree? Why is it important? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, the Department of Education says we need to promote better, healthier, more communication. Put that in your curriculum, okay? And as educational institutions, we go, of course, we'd love to. It's great, okay? Now, the other reason we put communications into your course plans is because aside from making your relationships better, even making your health better, these skills that we're going to run through in this class are the most highly sought after by employers, okay? Anytime there's an employer survey of, hey, what do you want your employees to have? Interpersonal communication is always in the top 5. It absolutely contributes to your ability to be successful. The hard thing about communication, especially, is that we're not born with all the skills, right? We have to learn. People think, well, once I learn how to talk, I can then communicate. Oh, no, that is not how that works at all. You have to work on these skills. You have to work really hard on these skills, in fact, okay? So what other skills do employers want? Pretty straightforward stuff. Ability to work on a team, right? The ability to speak clearly, concisely, making good decisions, critical thinking, problem solving, planning, organizing, prioritizing your work. Okay, these are all the skills. Now look at everything on that list. Every single thing on these top 5 skills that employers want can be fixed with excellent communication. Okay. Obviously, verbal communication is straightforward, but we're not born, good to go. We have to learn how to be effective speakers as well. So it's stuff you've got to work on it. And this is the work that will make you even more employable when you're done. Okay. So communication as a whole, couple things you need to know about it. Okay. Communication is absolutely unavoidable. Okay. You cannot not communicate. Even silence is communication. Those of you that have significant others or teenage children, you understand what silence can do. It's deadly, right? Communication is absolutely irreversible. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it is not going back in. Once it comes out of your mouth, same thing. You can't always rewind it. You can apologize, you can try to make it better, and you can fix it, but you can never reverse communication, okay? Interpersonal communication is a process. There are a bunch of models and steps and things you need to know. It's not something that just falls out of your face and is perfect. The end. That's it. And it's definitely not a panacea. A panacea means kind of like a fix-all, right? So if you learn good communication skills, will you avoid conflict for the rest of your life? Absolutely not. You'll just be able to handle it maybe a little better. Maybe you'll avoid conflict in the first place, right? But taking 1 or 2 communications class, heck, even getting a communications degree, you're still going to have issues. So this one class is not going to fix all of those problems, folks. I wish it did. Wouldn't that be amazing? I would teach everybody 1 class and then everybody would be wonderful. The end. All right, let's talk about how communication helps us achieve our goals. So when you think about all the goals you have in life, I want you to sort of consider them in these 3 categories, okay? There are instrumental goals. Well, don't worry, we'll break these down. Instrumental goals, which accomplish tasks. There are relational goals, which really focus on your relationships with other people, and your identity management goals. So how you want to be perceived or present yourself, okay? Now, good communication, again, will help you meet all of these goals. It's also going to help you participate in society as a more valuable member. Every single one of these super ladies up on my screen, they have different strengths, they have different weaknesses, they have different stories, origin stories, backstories, their why, their who, their how. But they all, on occasion, have to get along and work together. And that's you at work, okay? You're going to meet people that are wildly different than you are. And you've got to figure out how to get along with them or at least positively work with them. Communication is one of those strategic tools that's going to help you do that. So let's kind of break down some of these goals. Instrumental goals. These are the things where communication is helping you accomplish a task. Okay, things like gaining or resisting compliance. So if I were to ask, let's see, Anna Lynn, if I were to ask Anna Lynn to help me move this weekend, I'm asking for her compliance. And then if they say no, then they're resisting, right? I apologize. I assumed pronouns. Feel free to change your name and put your pronouns on there if that makes you at all comfortable, everybody. I should have said that right up top. Instrumental goals. So yes, we communicate to achieve those types of goals, requesting or presenting information. So if I ask you, yes, thank you, Annalyn. If I ask you how to do something, hey, you told me how to balance my cash register yesterday and I totally forgot. Can you tell me again? You know, communication. I'm requesting information, okay? Asking for, giving support. If somebody loses their job and they need a pat on the back, maybe I lose my job and you're like, well, you know, those guys are the worst. You don't want to work there anymore anyway, right? Those are some of the instrumental goals of communication as well. We also have that tailors right into our relational goals. This is communication that promotes or impedes based on our relationships, right? So we want to usually maintain positive relationships with people. And how do we do that? Well, we engage in maintenance. It's like taking your car to get the oil changed. You have to do the same thing with your relationship or it won't go well. It won't work well. Okay. So we have celebrations with people. We communicate honor or honor accomplishments, right? We organize an office party, right? We might communicate for relationship buy-in. So like if we decided to go out to breakfast or we want to make it together, let's just spend some time together maintaining this relationship. Okay, we communicate for that. We check in with people, we build them up, building our friendships. We might send them a text or post on their Facebook or whatever, you know, whatever works for your relationship. You're going to do those things to continue to grow that relationship. Communication, super vital part of that. Imagine only checking in or texting your friends once every 6 months. Might be fine, it might be cordial, but that's not really going to be a deep, meaningful relationship anymore. There's a little more to it. We communicate to achieve our presentation goals. These types of goals are how we establish our sense of self. This is a very important one. Think about how you portray yourself, what you wear, how you wear it. What do you have tattoos? I have tattoos. What does that mean? What does that say? How do you speak at work? Do you speak professionally? When I'm in a meeting, I'm very professional. When I'm leading a class, I'm a little more relaxed because I think it makes me a better teacher. We use communication to obtain a perception, right? Or to present different versions of ourselves for different situations. Now, there is sort of a common thing I'm hearing these days about, well, you should be the same person everywhere you go. And to some extent, I agree. And then to some extent, I totally disagree. Okay. I am not the same person on Friday night as I am Sunday morning, right? These are two very different versions of me. And I don't think that they're interchangeable. You don't want that person at church with you on Sunday who was at the club with you on Friday. Those two people don't go together at all. So I think it's okay to have different or distinct senses of self. It's really being able to be the truest version of you within that setting, right? So I think that's where it becomes a little more important, okay? So communication, we're back to this, communication being strategic. Now, we've talked about these 3 types of goals and how communication hits all of them. The other thing you've got to think about is that these 3 types of goals are also working together at the same time. So gosh, put all of that in your brain, right? I know through study that communication is vital to doing all of these things and doing them well. It's all going to be how you start to look at your goals and approach them in a way that, you know, perhaps moves you forward up that Maslow's pyramid, okay? Let's talk a little bit about some of the sciencey goodness of the communication model. Let's put this image up. This is the communication model. A lot of people think communication, like I said, super simple. You're born with it. You start talking one day and you're awesome at it. Well, little more to it. So what you can see here on the image is you've got two people and they're having a conversation. Now, the gal on the left, the blue, she's the sender. So she's going to send the message. In order to send the message, she has to encode it with information, okay? So that means she's going to think about the words she wants to say, the thoughts she's having. She's going to think about a way to organize it, and then she's going to send the message, okay? The message is sent via a channel. So the channel is basically, if we're talking, the channel is vocal and you hear me through your ears. If I email you, the channel is electronic and you read it, okay? So that's the channel. So the sender has encoded the message and sent it via the channel to the receiver. The receiver takes in all of that information and puts it in their brain and decodes it, okay? They make meaning out of it. They apply their own set of rules to whatever has been said. And that's the basics of how it works. Now, there's one part there in the middle I haven't addressed yet, and that is noise. Noise is a very important part of the communication model, okay? Noise is a big deal because noise happens at almost every single stage of the communication model. And it takes a lot of forms as well, okay? So if it's loud in here and you literally cannot hear the words coming out of my mouth, that's noise, sure. But if you are at your house trying to listen to me lecture right now and your kid is like pulling on your legs saying, I'm hungry, I want dinner, that's a different kind of noise, but it's still interrupting our message, all right? If you are stressed about another class, or, you know, for me, taxes are due pretty soon and I'm thinking about that, that's also psychological noise. These things can absolutely get in the way of proper communication. I also want to address down there the feedback that the receiver sends. This one is a little bit, as far as communication goes, controversial. I would say there's bigger issues we've got, but in the communication world, this one's a little controversial. Some folks say that feedback is vital in the communication model. Some say it doesn't play a part. I'll let y'all decide, see what you think. So after the sender encodes the message and sends it via the channel to the receiver who decodes it, the receiver has some responsibility to send feedback. Either, oh, yeah, really? What did he say then? You know, or nodding, or heck, even if he falls asleep, you're giving feedback, right? So it's a two-way model, right? Some people say it's a linear one-way model. Some people say you've got to have feedback or it's not real communication. Here is the same idea, only of course, because it's school, they're going to make it way more complicated. Same idea though. This is the exact same as the other picture, just sort of drawn out if that's a little better for your brain. Now, look at all these different stages of the communication model. Look at where all these messages have to go, the noise that can get in the way. You can have miscommunication at just about every single stage of the process, okay? We'll go through those, I think I want to say in week 2, but I want you to keep this model in mind and, you know, commit it to memory, get a tattoo on your thigh. This is very important. We're going to be breaking this down as we go through the course, okay? So, basic communication model. Now, when you are choosing to communicate, especially at work, there's a couple of things you want to think about. And mostly where we find issues at work specifically is, let me go back one, in the channel. Okay, so when you're communicating at work, I want you to consider the channel, all right? So a couple of things I want you to think about when you're trying to pick, how should I deliver my message? Which channel should I choose? Well, consider the richness. How much really good, rich information can be communicated via the channel, okay? If I want to give you a sarcastic text message, think about that. Does sarcasm come across in text message? Not always, because the channel can only communicate the written word. It cannot convey my tone or my hilarious jokes. There's no font that says this is sarcasm, right? So you have to consider what you need to communicate. Think about how instant you need the feedback. So do you need someone to LOL you right away, or do you need the answer to the question right now? If so, you're going to need a channel that will allow for that. Does the channel allow you to personally focus on the person or the event or the issue? And if does it need to, right? If I'm sending you a joke in a text message, maybe I don't need to think about you, my receiver, and how you'll take it, right? But if I am going to break up with you, I'm going to need to consider your human feelings, your emotions, and I'll need to put a little more effort into that, okay? So that's the idea with choosing the richness of the channel. I want you to consider the speed of the channel. Again, how quickly we're exchanging messages. There are two types of channel speeds. There's asynchronous, which means delayed, where I can get back to you whenever I need to. And there's synchronous, which is right now, what we're doing. Okay, so consider how fast do you need that response, and how fast do you need the other person to sort of process your emotion or your message, I mean. So think about it. When I get an asynchronous message like an email, it comes in. I know because it's an email, maybe I don't want to respond to it right away. I can think about the message. I can consider and craft my response to make sure I'm doing things well. Okay. If I'm going to send an email that's, angry, there might be a knee-jerk reaction. Okay. So if I want to maybe offer some polite criticism, perhaps I consider the speed at which I want to do that and how quickly I want the other person to absorb the information. And then I want you to consider the control of the channel. How much can you manage the process? So you never totally have complete control, because communication's two ways, right? I can only control me. I can control how I am encoding my message, and I can control how I send it, which channel, things like that. But ultimately, that message comes out of my face and goes into the receiver, and it's theirs now. They're going to interpret it how they want. They're going to attach meaning to things. It's wildly out of my control once it leaves me. Okay, so when you're delivering your message and you're thinking, I need to control how this is put out there. Okay, well, let's see what channel would be best for that. Okay, so communicating on behalf of work. I want you to think of the tone of the organization you're in. Tone. Tone is kind of hard to describe. I like to call tone the outfit your words are wearing. Okay, so if I came into this session and I was like, welcome, esteemed students, please place all your video recording device on. I want to see all of your faces. That's a very formal tone. Okay, I'm a rather informal person. That's just how I am. If I came in and I said, Bianca, turn your camera on. Annalyn, calm down. Right? That's very bossy. That's not my style either. But it conveys something, right? Because of the tone I'm using. So when you're talking about communicating at work, what's the tone of the workplace? I've worked at schools where it's very, very formal. I was not allowed to show tattoos. I had to wear a suit jacket, no ifs, ands, or buts. Okay. If I'm communicating at that organization, I'm going to have a formal tone in all of my communications. That's what they want. Here, a lot more relaxed, a lot less uptight, West Coast kind of feel. I love it. So that's how I'm going to communicate with you folks. I'm going to have a pretty relaxed lecture. I'm going to be open and honest. I'll probably make some mistakes while we lecture because I'm a human being, but I'm allowed to be, right? Because that's the tone I'm setting for our class. All right. What about your workplace? What do you got? What is it like there? Is your boss totally uptight? Is he really fancy and wants to put off a very, you know, certain vibe that you need to fit into? What's the culture of your organization? Okay. How do they want to be seen to the outside world? Um, I'm sorry, I can only use schools as an example, but I've worked for schools where they want to be seen as the best of the best, very prestigious. And so that is how we communicate. You have to. Okay. Um, when all else fails, when you're considering how to communicate, which channel to choose, how to encode your message, all of those things, I want you to consider using multiple channels. Okay, there's a theory in education called dual coding. Basically, if I give you the same piece of information and I give it to you in multiple ways, you're going to have an easier time remembering it. So if I tell you something and then I make you write it down, you've coded it in your ears and you've coded it in written communication. So now it's in two places in your brain, okay? Which makes it easier for you to pull it up later. So if you have a very important message that you want to get out there, consider using more than one channel. If you're giving a speech, give a handout. When I open the lecture, I give you an agenda so you can see where we're going, and you don't just think this is the endless lecture until we all die tonight. Okay. If you write a serious email, maybe follow it up with a phone call or vice versa. All right. So consider using more than one channel. It's pretty effective. I wanted to give you some examples of different channels when you're considering work communication. Always face-to-face and telephone. I think voicemail is a little bit going by the wayside. I can't remember the last time I left a voicemail. When I work, it's been IMs and emails lately, texts, that kind of thing. And I can just feel a piece being lost, right? I yearn for the days of walking down and knocking on somebody's office and just kind of going in and hanging and chatting and communicating that way. So consider what's best for you, for your organization, for your coworker, and for the message. Okay. This week, we talk a little bit about formal communication networks. This is an example from your textbook. What you'll need to know for the testing and the quizzes for the week is you'll need to understand what the formal communication network looks like and kind of why they exist. All right. So this is what it would look like in like a boss, or a pretty traditional work environment. You've got a manager who has an assistant. Then you've got somebody who manages the people. They have direct reports. And in a lot of formal organizations, the CS reps talk to their assistant manager. The assistant manager talks to the manager, right? But the CS rep does not go straight up the chain and talk to the manager at the top. There's sort of a right and a wrong way to send a message, okay? And there is also something called a flat organization, which is a fairly new and radical way of thinking, where anybody can go to any person at any time. So there's pros and cons to both models, right? I just want you to have an idea of what we're talking about when we're referring to formal communication networks. That's this kind of structure. You talk to them, who talks to them, who talks to them, right? There's a process there. Now, in a formal communication network, there's three types of communication happening. You got your downward communication, which is top down, manager to the employee. Usually this is where we're telling you what needs to happen. We're not asking you to provide feedback at all. We're just telling you, hey, this is a new policy. This is what's happening. You need to do your homework by Wednesday. Great, break, go out and be awesome, right? That's downward communication. We also have upward communication. Very straightforward. That's from the bottom to the top. So a lot of organizations really claim, hey, we love communication from our employees, right? And a lot of the time they do when it communicates progress. They would love to hear from the employees about how great we're doing, or how awesome our outcomes are going to be. But if there's an issue at the bottom, it can be considered undesirable to send it up the communication lines. So mostly, like I said, Downward communication, we're telling you what you need to do, now go do it. Upward, we're telling you how we feel. Can you do anything about that? We'll see. That depends on the organization, right? There is also horizontal communication. This is when we have communication from people at the same level. This is stuff like, we've got to get together to solve a problem. Hey, we've got a big project due next week. Hey, I heard you made a complaint to the boss. Would you tell me first next time? Conflict resolution stuff. Even some of the, hey, let's go to lunch and I'd like to hang out with you and get to know you a little bit better. That's all horizontal communication. You'll see a lot of that in the middle. Actually, let me go back. A lot of horizontal communication. Let me look at this for you. You'll see it, it's almost like in a click, right? So you'll see that Ted, Claire, and Maria have good horizontal communication. They might have some good communication with Chris. Tara, Don, Jose, Bob, Phil, Steve, Malik, Sue, and Pam, I'll bet they have a really great rapport, but they don't have horizontal communication to their assistant managers, so it's kind of cliquish. That's where a lot of really good teamwork stuff happens, okay? So we talked about formal communication. What's informal communication networks? Well, this is kind of when you find your friends at work. Okay. Usually if somebody from the top communicates downward and says, hey, new policy, we're doing this, you will then go to your peers and say, did you hear we're doing this? What do you think? And then that gives you a chance to maybe vent or be frustrated or be excited, whatever the case may be, right? A lot of that is informal communication. So the functions of those informal networks, you got to confirm those formal messages. So the boss is super serious this time, right? He said, for reals, don't do this anymore. Okay, all right, got it. Expands on them. Takes those official messages where there's like an opening in your organization and can keep those going, beyond what the official channel. Well, you have to apply for it through the job board and then I'll pull your resume. No, we'll just informally, hey, if you give me your resume, I'm happy to get it where it needs to go. Okay. Sometimes, however, it can contradict official messages. These are the most frustrating. If I get a note from my boss saying, hey, it's due on Friday, and then my coworker says, he said it was due next Monday, right? That's contradictory. Now I have to figure that out. I get to turn into a detective. It's fun. Informal networks can also circumvent or go around formal channels. These are fun too. I like to call this, it's not what you know, it's who you know. If I play tennis with the boss, I'm going to learn some stuff that I might hear about before the other employees do, right? So I'll get the news first. It's important for you to understand informal networks and cultivate those personal networks while you are at work. Keep in mind that every single person you work with could get you your next job. All right. All your family members, your neighbors, your coworkers, your bosses, your subordinates, the people that report to you, even the gals at the front desk, could be the person that get you your next job. Communicate with them as such. Be aware of personal and cultural factors, right? So it's when you start to cultivate your personal network, it gets a little bit like a numbers game, right? Well, you could be a contact, you could be a contact. Yeah, but I'm also a human being. So don't, still treat me like a person, right? Not just your next boss, okay? Always, of course, gratitude and respect. That's a pretty basic tenet. Help others as you would want to be helped. Right? So if somebody provides you a reference, be willing to give them one back. Get referrals to secondary sources. This has actually been very helpful as I've built my career. Maybe you can't get me a job, but you could get me in front of that person who's hiring in my area, right? So consider asking for a secondary source. And then seek a mentor. This has been amazing in my career. Someone who can guide you, to train you, coach you, counsel you, someone who knows the role you're going into or the job environment you're going into and can absolutely talk you through it, let you know the ins and the outs. Those people are completely invaluable, okay? All right, we've got like 4 more slides. We're coming to the end. Hang tight. You guys are doing great. Let's talk real quick about ethics, okay? Real quick. There will be more. Don't worry. For the testing, I want you to understand the different approaches to communication ethics, okay? So imagine you're at work. There's something going on. You don't quite know how to handle it. You have to consider all of these frames and lenses to decide the route you want to take, okay? So the utilitarian approach, is this going to be the greatest good for the greatest number of people? Those of you who are familiar with something called the trolley problem, utilitarian, okay? The rights approach, does this action respect the moral rights of everyone, right? So if you're gonna, we should use an example. Let's say we have to decide if we're gonna fire Princess, okay? Because Princess makes way more money than any of us. And if we fire Princess, we can take her salary and split it up between all of us, okay? So utilitarian, greatest good for the greatest number? Absolutely. If we were processing that decision through that ethical frame, we would fire Princess because more people benefit, one person loses. Through the rights approach, is it respectful of her moral rights? Well, no, not really. Why do we even know how much money she makes? You know, that's a whole other thing, but maybe not. Is the action fair and free of discrimination or favoritism? Are we firing Princess because we don't like her? Or because we like someone better? Or because we just want the money? Or let's consider the justice approach. The common good, does the action further the common or community good? Well, kind of, right? I mean, if the community is us, the rest of us, that would absolutely benefit us. If the community is like our whole neighborhood and Princess lives there with us, that community is going to be damaged. So got to think of that. The virtue approach, how does the action promote the development of character in me and my community? Does it make me a better person to do it or not? Well, it wouldn't be very virtuous if I was simply firing Princess to get her salary, right? How would an impartial jury of your peers judge the action if you were put on trial and you went to court and I said, and they said, you're guilty of firing Princess for personal gain? Like, or would they say, no, we got it. We see why you did that, okay? Publicity test, if that went all over Facebook, if that was in the news, how would you feel about it? Would you be embarrassed? Would you be comfortable? I mean, I wouldn't want people to know that I fired a perfectly good employee just because I wanted their money. That would make me look awful. So maybe not, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can look at some of these ethical communication conundrums, right? So things to think about. I want you to know the differences between these for the test, okay? Okay, real quick, we're gonna overview very quickly all the main points so you know how to study. Remember, communication, very important for your career success, okay? It meets all of the instrumental strategic goals. I want you to know the model of communication, sender, encoding, receiving, feedback channel, decoding, all of that jazz. I want you to understand what noise is and how it plays a part in communication. I want you to understand what a formal communication network is, what an informal network is, and I want you to have a pretty decent idea of the ethical components of communication. You know, how would you apply the ethical frameworks to make good choices, okay, in your communication? Okay, all right, I'm ready, let's talk. If you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to pop them in the chat or come off mute if you would like, and holler at me. If you are good and you're ready to go kill all the content for this week, you know exactly how to approach it and you're ready, by all means, feel free to drop off the line and we will see you next week. I'll come back on video. And I'm glad I got your name right, Annalyn. That's good.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
right, thank you.
Bye, you bet. We'll see you next week.
Nice to meet you, by the way.
Absolutely.